Look, thank you, colleagues. And look, I too will begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and their elders past, present and emerging. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to you. And the first thing I want to say today is you're going to hear from a lot of speakers who are far more expert in this than I am. So what I thought I'd do today is to tell you just a few stories from my experience, make a few observations around technology and trade. I have been at TIQ only for a few months, and before that I led Advance Queensland, which is the state government's innovation agenda. So over since 2015, the government has invested $650 million in Advance Queensland to transform our economy. And what we know is that innovative businesses are more likely to export, and exporting businesses are more likely to be innovative. We know that in Queensland, knowledge-based exports have increased by 40% over the past 4 years, far exceeding the growth of what people might think of as our traditional exports. And they're now worth $3.3 billion. Now, we in Queensland have got a way to go. We're still relying on those large-scale commodities. But that sort of knowledge intensification process is absolutely essential to our state's future. So I thought what I might do today is just do a little bit of reflecting on how technology is changing trade in a range of ways. How we sell, how we buy, how we connect. And again, I'm just going to touch on a couple of examples because you're going to dive in and explore this in much more detail later in the day with experts greater than I. And I thought I might just start by talking about the Queensland Government's objectives for this state. The government set a very clear path to what it calls the future state. And as a trade and investment organisation, we're undergoing a refresh agenda where we're putting a lot more focus on innovation, on entrepreneurship, on knowledge-based services. What we're seeking to do is, through trade and investment, to both grow and transform the Queensland economy. And growth is about our core sectors, our established firms, our core regional strengths continuing to grow. But transformation is about new sectors, about new capabilities, about frontier firms and emerging firms. And to some degree, our future as a state and our future economy depends upon doing both together. And when we think about what drives growth and transformation, it's ideas and talent and capital and connections. And all of those things are things that my organisation is really interested in. But when you think about technology and the role it plays, it can underpin both the growth and transformation of our industries in Queensland. So when we think about what we sell, and I talked about the sort of diversification of our exports, I just want to tell you a couple of stories about Queensland firms who are doing amazing things through robotics. Now, there's been a lot of speculation in the press about the role of robotics in displacing jobs. In fact, when we think about our trading relationships, it is exactly the opposite. Introducing robotics into Queensland workplaces unambiguously creates jobs, makes us more competitive and enables us to export more. So the two firms I'll talk about are UAP. They're both on the north side here of Brisbane. So UAP are a creative firm. They're using robotics to do public art displays. And they are selling around the world, in Shanghai, in London, in the United States. Some of their work was at the Commonwealth Games. Absolutely fantastic firm, using robotics in a creative way and creating that export of services opportunity. The other example is Watkins Steel. Now, they're a 50-year-old steel fabricator out at Banyo in a back street. Des Watkins, their founder, inherited the firm from his father, and he has absolutely transformed it. So from a traditional steel fabrication firm, he's now actually deployed robots for his precision steel fabrication. Every robot that he's put on the production line has enabled him to create 10 new jobs. What it's enabled him to do is the people who were working on the production line are now out servicing clients. He's now got young tradespeople who are coming into his firm who are being trained to use AR, VR, to work with robotics, to work with clients, etc. And what's really great is there's caravan fabrication that was being done in China and is now being brought back to Queensland and being done at Banyo by Watkins Steel because they have the robotics. So when we talk about reshoring and we talk about the opportunities, Watkins Steel is doing it. Des is an incredibly modest guy, but his story to me is a story of optimism that says in a high-wage economy, but a high-skill economy as we are, technology enables our international competitiveness. It enables us to compete in manufacturing. So to the people who say that we cannot compete on a global stage in manufacturing in this country, yes we can, but we can if we embrace technology. So they're really great stories, and I love the UAP story because it's about creativity as well. And that's another angle where technology can help us. In terms of what we sell as well, we tend to think of exports only as goods going out. But if I can suggest to you that if Queensland can be a global testbed for new technology, we can create huge new export and trading opportunities for this state. So let me give you an example. Boeing, now obviously a little bit contentious at the moment, but Boeing is a key partner of the Queensland government. They have been investing in this state for 20 years. A couple of years ago, we funded a project in the Surat Basin to the west of Brisbane, where the coal seam gas industry is. So traditionally, the gas companies, to inspect their gas wells, they'd send 2 men in a truck, and they could inspect 10 wells in a day to check on the wells. You may be aware that coal seam gas is somewhat contentious, and that to get to these wells, they have to go onto farmers' properties, which is always an interesting thing. The partnership we formed with Boeing, with Telstra, and with Queensland Gas was about using drones with sensors to do remote monitoring of gas wells. And what that meant, instead of inspecting 10 wells a day, it was 10 an hour. And that technology was trialled here in Queensland, and it's now been exported back to the United States. We've built on that partnership. So Boeing's single largest R&D project outside of the United States of America is now in Queensland. We are now a testbed for fully autonomous drones. And what's more is they're drones that don't just operate singularly, they operate in fleets. So what Boeing is doing with us is looking at what they call the brain, the advanced smarts of these autonomous drones, and the voice, which allows them to talk to each other. And we will have a huge drone testing site in Western Queensland, potentially one of the biggest in the world, and we will be testing for global companies right here in Queensland drone technology, including autonomous drones. What this means is that we create a supply chain of companies that are feeding into this exercise. We provide job opportunities for our young people, and we create export opportunities for this state. Many of you may know that Facebook trials its new tweaks to its site in New Zealand. Okay, many of you have heard this because, New Zealand's a small country. If something goes wrong, well, it's not really true these days, is it? But anyway, you know what I mean. We in Queensland can be a global testbed for new technology. And we are hell-bent as a government on making sure that the smarts of testing are done here, because it's that smarts that creates the opportunities for the future. When we think about how we sell, the rise of e-commerce, and you're going to talk to, it's incredible, absolutely incredible. We've, for many years now, been working with exporters to train them in the art of e-commerce. I was absolutely amazed. I was in Townsville a little while ago talking to a lady who has a toy manufacturing business, traditional wooden toys. And she only sells via e-commerce. She is so busy that Australia Post has a dedicated van that comes to and from her premises to service her business. That's happening in Townsville. So it's absolutely fantastic what we're seeing. We're seeing there's a business called Starman Farms out at Toowoomba, and they sell pecans and pine nuts and macadamia nuts, etc. But they're selling through a dedicated Chinese e-commerce platform, which I have forgotten the name of. Just excuse me for a moment. Be reminded of that. Timor. Not sure if you've heard of it, but they're using that e-commerce platform to sell within China, and you all know there's a bit, walls, etc. It's actually quite challenging, but they are doing it. So the ability to use online channels is absolutely transforming export in Queensland. But what it's enabling more small firms in niches to get involved in global trade. And to me, that's one of the great things about technology. It enables small players to participate. It enables them to overcome a lot of the barriers. We also have the rise of Bitcoin. Now, not sure what the future of Bitcoin is, but that idea of cryptocurrency is extremely interesting. So we have a local firm, Travel by Bit. Caleb Eo is the founder of that firm. They're based out at Sandgate. They've got a product where they've enabled Brisbane Airport to be the first international airport in the world to accept cryptocurrency. Now, that might sound a little bit niche, but you think about it, in terms of if cryptocurrencies takes off, people will be able to use their Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever it is at BAC. And that's an edge for us. So these new ways of selling, these new platforms, these new ways to use technology are taking off. And I was pleased to find out only yesterday that Agnes Waters near Bundaberg, I don't know if any of you have been there, beautiful place, lovely beaches, first Bitcoin town in Australia, using Bitcoin to attract tourists. A great thing. And when we think about how we connect and trade, the logistics of trade are absolutely extraordinary. Our very own Port of Brisbane was one of the first ports in Australia to sort of fully automate some of its containerisation, but also to start to use blockchain to trade where things are in the supply chain. Absolutely amazing. And the potential of blockchain, and you'll probably come to it today, is extraordinary. Many of you may know our state's chief entrepreneur, Leanne Kemp. She is an amazing success story. She developed a blockchain product for diamonds. So many of you will be familiar in the diamond trade, the whole concept of blood diamonds, and where they come from is very important. She developed a way using blockchain to trace diamonds. She started her startup in Brisbane. She now has 6 offices around the world, over 100 staff. She is a genuine local startup that has scaled up using blockchain technology. And she's a proud Queenslander, and she's our chief entrepreneur. And you think about that potential, you think about it in agriculture, you think about it in any number of firms any number of industries where provenance is important, where tracking is important. But the potential of blockchain to reduce a lot of the paper-based friction, because I've been amazed at how much paper is still used in trade. It's extraordinary. And who knows, maybe one day government will embrace it and we'll, go to the next level. Can't be confident about that. But absolutely fantastic potential. And in terms of how we connect, one of the things we're really conscious of is if we're saying that e-commerce is really important, if we're saying that you have to be able to connect and trade online, then access to fast internet is absolutely critical to business success and to this new trading economy that we're talking about. In Queensland, we are a regional state, as you know. It's one of our strengths, but distance can be a tyranny. We have some of the most uncompetitive internet services in the nation. So the Queensland government has taken the step that we're actually going to open up our own fibre optic network that connects our power stations, that connects our water, that connects our rail. 6,000 kilometres of fibre optic public cable will be opened up to be used by the private sector to connect regional Queensland. We are very confident that this new public enterprise will enable regional Queensland to get internet that is at the same quality as South East Queensland. But the really great thing is we have dark fibre on our networks. Dark fibre that can be opened up with new technology to potentially provide absolutely amazing speeds. So we're going to do a global tender to open up that dark fibre and light up regional Queensland, enabling these firms to participate in this new digital economy. And if ever there was a role for government, this is it. So, and it will be particularly good for small businesses in regional Queensland. So when I talk about the potential of technology and trade, I do not pretend that we are where we need to be. We have a lot more work to do. But certainly in Queensland, certainly with the effort that the government is undertaking with our partners, we are making significant progress. Now, there's a quote up there from David Bowie, So I think you're all probably too young to remember him. Actually, no, looking at you, no, you know exactly who I'm talking about. And it's one of my favourite quotes, and he says, "The future belongs to those who can see it coming." So for the Queensland Government, we like to think that to some degree we've seen where the future is. We'd like to think that we're positioning this state for global success through technology, through innovation, but in a way that is inclusive, in a way that creates jobs, in a way that includes our regions, in a way that includes small business, in a way that opens up opportunity across the state. As I say, a lot done, but a lot more to do. I commend your conference today. I think it's a great topic, and to QUT for holding it. I hope it's a productive conversation and that we get some learnings out of about how we can further develop technology to help the future of trade. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. That was really interesting. Do we have any questions for Paul? Yes, here.
Yeah. Thanks, Paul, for very informative presentation today, especially the case studies for Queensland farm. And we visited Watson Skill a few months back. It's really amazing. And also Bundaberg is the one of the top 10 internet cities in Australia. Recently, it ranked according to Australian Post statistics. Yes, no wonder. There are farms in our region that are leveraging the opportunities of e-commerce. My question about the knowledge economy. So you said that the knowledge base exports has increased like 40% or so. Can you provide further detail of that, where they are locating, how you actually getting these statistics and so forth? Yeah.
So they're ABS statistics, and they come out. I think, fairly regularly. It was interesting when I started this job, having come in from innovation. We every month we release the overall trade statistics for Queensland, and I can tell you, business is booming and the results are fantastic, and you know it's all up. But I was particularly interested in how is the nature of our exports changing. And so the ABS have these stats, and it's in areas, really interesting areas like precision machinery and drugs, etc., where we're doing the exports. They're going to places like Europe and the States. They're also going to the South Pacific and other areas. So, but it is interesting because it tells you a story about that people don't often know about Queensland. And I'm certainly keen to make more of that and actually to grow those knowledge-based exports, because a lot of them come out of our traditional strengths. Yeah.
Thank you. That was really fascinating presentation, and really exciting to hear about the robotics firms in particular. There's obviously a lot of governments around the globe are really keen to stimulate the robotics industry, and some are taking, I guess, a more proactive approach than others, both at the federal level and at state levels. Just in terms of the testbed approach that's evident in other industry areas, I wonder, is there much activity of using the government as a testbed, government services, government procurement as a testbed for small robotics firms in Queensland? I only ask because I've seen it in other international contexts, and it seems like a really interesting approach, but wasn't aware of any particular examples here.
So we are, innovation within government is actually quite challenging. I know you're going to be surprised and you say, no, Paul, it's not true, but it is. We have a program called TWIG, which is testing within government, which is about releasing small-scale tech challenges to the market to solve, and that's been really good. We are looking at ways to expand that. I think it's fair to say it's the drone space has actually been much more prolific in terms of police, emergency services, etc., using drones, main roads using drones, etc. Robotics less so. And look, it may be a product of the nature of our services as a state, I'm not sure, but certainly in terms of uptake of new technologies, there's active use. I mean, let me give you an example. One of the things we're looking at the moment is we have a fire ant problem in Queensland, and we're looking at how can we use drones to do monitoring of fire ants, which is interesting because Texas has exactly the same problem, and now it's taking off. They're spreading in China as well. So it's an interesting example of if we can crack that problem in Queensland, we can actually sell that service and that technology around the world.
Thank you. I was interested to hear you mention Leanne Camp from Everledger. I've just been at a conference in Singapore dealing with insolvency and restructuring of businesses, and she certainly had the attention of the audience when she spoke about cryptocurrency, when insolvency practitioners come in and need to secure assets and how to secure cryptocurrency. But anyway, that's for another day. What I was interested in is, could you just talk a little bit about what the role of the chief entrepreneur is and how you see that will contribute to Queensland? Thank you.
Yeah, so we were the first state in Australia to establish the role. What it was a really explicit recognition by government that if we're going to play in the innovation space, which is so fast moving and so rapidly changing, that we needed to operate differently, and we needed to, frankly, someone to give us a bit of a push and a bit of a shove. So the chief entrepreneur is someone who sits within government but outside government. The person has to be someone who has actually established, started and scaled their own startup business. So they provide advice to government, they provide feedback. But what's interesting is they're also an advocate for entrepreneurship and for telling the story of entrepreneurs and encouraging young people to think about not just taking a job, but making a job. So it's a bit of an ambassador, it's a bit of an advocate, it's a bit of a critical friend, it's a bit of an advisor. It's been incredibly valuable. So Leanne is our third chief entrepreneur. Each of them have come from different walks of life, but the South Australians have copied the model now, and I think there's some speculation the West might as well. But look, we need to recognise that in the space of innovation, we've got to keep up with our startup community, and the Chief Entrepreneur and the Chief Entrepreneur's Office is a way that government can do that. And I found, having run our innovation programs, the input of the Chief Entrepreneur has been absolutely critical.